Hello, retro fans. Well, yet another episode on C64 Customs, and it's not going to be that much about customizing things, but about nice things to have or nice things to use in combination with retro hardware like the C64 or Atari systems or something like this. And there was in particular one thing I was really keen to get when I came back to retro some years ago. And it was actually the Joystick TAC 2 by Suncom. And this is probably one of the most iconic joysticks ever produced. And I think it is really worth to mention in the same sentence like the Competition Quick Shot Pro. And this is the USB version. So in terms, just in case you are wondering. And the main reason is that since I'm using the TAC 2 most of the time, I do not have a quick shot joystick here actually available. So I had to go for the USB version, which I use occasionally for some PC gaming, or I have used this quite a lot with the C64 Mini, for example, beside the fact that it is missing a couple of buttons and making operating the C64 Mini a little bit, let's say cumbersome. But well, anyway, the joystick is of much better build quality compared to the original joystick. But that's not going to be the topic today. Today I'm going to talk about my newest acquisition, and that was something I was really looking for and waiting for, well, years, so to say. And it is, surprise, surprise, another TAC 2 joystick by Suncom, but it is the so-called beige version, or as I call it, the albino version. And I have to say, I really have to admit that I'm not that much into collecting things just for the purpose of collecting them. Most of the stuff I'm trying to get is actually something I'm really interested in to use as well, to understand how it is working, or maybe to use it within a different device, something like this. So it's most of the time quite technical. I have some sort of a passion for cartridges, C64 cartridges, so to say. And I'm looking every now and then if I get one or two for my collections, but I tend to use them as well, as much as I'm using games at all. That's some of my points at all. But anyway, as I've learned that the TAC 2 joystick is probably one of the joysticks you really have to own once in your life at least, I was quite happy to have the black one, until I learned that there's a white one as well. So I thought, well, if you really want to have the most iconic joystick at all, then you really need both versions, so to say. And then I was starting to look for the beige version, and there was none. And I quickly learned that it is really, really hard to get one. And it is even harder to get one that is in a decent condition, so to say. And I have found some in very bad conditions, very dirty and very worn out. And it is probably not worth spending the money on them, except if it's really something you want to bring back to life, but as long as we are talking about plastic parts, there is some sort of an end of lifetime. And especially as we know from the C64 cases or floppy drive cases or other computer cases from the 80s, they get some sort of brownish over the time. And this process is just to some extent reversible, but there's an actually limit, and then those devices start to look a bit, let's say, old, just to avoid saying ugly. Anyway, so, and therefore I was really waiting for a version or a model or a piece or whatever we want to call it that is in some sort of good condition. And today's episode is simply about testing this one and seeing if it is worth the money I have spent on it and if it is worth having it at all. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's jump directly to the view of my desk where those two, siblings whatsoever are presented side by side, and I have zoomed in a little bit because it's all about the joystick today. So let's make some space, get rid of the black one for a minute, at least for the length of this video, not all of the time, and have a look at the TAC 2 joystick. It's called a totally accurate controller, so that's the meaning of TAC. And as you can see, they haven't spent that much time adjusting the print. They just printed it, and then I think they changed the metal part into its final position, and therefore we have some sort of stretching effect. But if you look straight from above, it is quite okay. And here we see the Suncom logo, and at the bottom we have another mentioned Suncom Incorporated, made in USA, patent number whatsoever. And the interesting thing is that I did some research on the internet and I wasn't able to figure out when exactly this joystick was introduced to the market. And there are some, let's say, thoughts, opinions, ideas about this. And they range from something 1985 to 1998, 1999, something like this. So it looks like there is no real knowledge about this, and that's quite interesting. I mean, this joystick has been built with a certain idea, with a certain purpose, and with a certain approach, and some may assume that there are some more information than just 3 lines in Wikipedia and in the Retro Joystick Museum, and some mentionings in some forums here and there. But well, it looks like this knowledge is kind of lost. But you can prove me wrong, so feel free. If you have any ideas, please post it to the comment section. I'm really looking forward to learn when this device was brought to the market, and yeah, that's actually something I really want to learn. So before we going to dig into the details of this joystick, I want to have indeed a short test session if it is working at all. So I have connected this to my C64 already so that we can load up some, let's say, games. And I'm going to use my favorite cartridge. And let's start with Drelps, because that's some game I have encountered quite recently, because this was one of the very first games I have played on the C64. I never really got the idea what the main, well, let's say, story or purpose of this game is. So it is just some very mad, confusing, running around, doing things sort of game, but it is indeed very entertaining, and it's a good way to test the joystick. So, totally forgot how to start this, so probably have to change joystick port. And here we go. So there are actually 2 levels, and in the first level we have to close all those boxes, trying to avoid that sort of creature roaming around looking for us. And as soon as we have closed enough boxes, then we will have a chance to run into the next level, and there is even the chance to kind of trap this creature, and that's the main purpose for getting close to it, as I did here right now. And now, oh, I trapped almost myself. We have to find a level that looks like this, or a box like this. And now we have to sort of wake up all those other lookalikes. And as you may guess, the game gets more and more challenging as soon as you approach higher levels. And yeah, that's basically all we have to do here. But it is very nice to test joysticks because you have to react quite quickly to things that are going to happen on the screen. So we made it. Quite surprised to see this. And then we start over again with the simple change of having 2 creatures hounding us right now. And it keeps on going like this, that it is simply increasing the amount of, well, creatures, or whatever we want to call this. And to a certain point, my brain gets a bit overwhelmed looking for those sprites. And especially if they're going to shoot in different directions, then things like this are going to happen quite quickly. And as you can see, the joystick is working like a charm. It's really fantastic. I'm pretty surprised, because even as good as the TAC 2 is built, it has indeed some flaws. And one major thing we have to pay attention to is actually corrosion. I mean, if you are in a very, let's say, passionate game session, you start to sweat a little bit on your hands, and after a while this may get into the joystick as well, and this may act as a corrosion enabler on the contacts inside the joystick. And I see this with my black one. If I have neglected it for a while, then the first couple of minutes are a little bit tricky to start, and then it comes back quite quickly. And yeah, as one of the main, well, features, or how we want to call this, properties or something like this. The TAC 2 has actually 2 fire buttons, so it's for lefties and for right-hand people. And they are acting the very same. They're simply just connected to each other, and there's no auto fire. So, and if you're going to approach a different sort of game, like Gyrus, for example, then we have to have quick fingers and perhaps different joystick port as usual. Yep, indeed. There we go. So this is very much like the original arcade game. There was no auto fire either, so you have to press the button quite quickly. But there's a nice and simple fix built by the community. I'm not even aware who did this. I just got some PCBs quite a while ago, and you can simply add a little adapter to it, and it looks basically like this. And with this one we will get auto fire, and usually this is connected to my TAC 2 most of the time. And this makes the life of an old gamer way more comfortable, so to say. Although I have to admit it is a little bit like cheating. So anyway. So, and even here we can see this joystick is working perfectly. And in every cases I have died in this game, this is just due to my lack of skill and not really down to the quality of the joystick at all. And there's actually just one last game I'd like to test. Oh, wrong joystick port. Indeed, indeed. And this is indeed Buggy Boy. I think that's a port 2 game. And Buggy Boy for the C64 is probably the best arcade conversion ever made for a different system except for the original. It looks cute, it plays fantastically, it has a very nice response, a very nice speed feeling, and even the sounds are quite nice. There are perhaps better sounds in other games. Got no disc. And the reason for picking this game as a test is actually that you have to press the stick in a forward motion and in order to accelerate, and you have to steer, and therefore you have to use, let's say, XY contacts or diagonal contacts. And this is actually something where the TAC 2 is a little bit weak compared to, for example, the Competition Pro, because the Competition Pro is using micro switches, and they have some sort of a lever, and the joystick, well, center shaft actually is pressing onto the lever. And due to the characteristic of the micro switches, you have some sort of an envelope or an hysteresis, if it is called like this. And so if you have pressed the micro switch lever to a certain point, then it snaps to on. And if you move away the joystick shaft a little bit, then it's still it is still on before it snaps back, so to say. And therefore you have a little bit of room to operate. Whereas on the TAC 2 there is nothing like this. There is contact or there is no contact. And we are going to have a look inside of the joystick, and we will see why it is the way it is. And yep, I think that's actually enough of Buggy Boy. I'm not going to finish the whole game in this episode. Probably a funny exercise to do this on a Sunday afternoon stream or something like this. Finishing all stages of Buggy Boy would be a nice challenge. Yeah, but as I have said, let's have a look inside. As the title was saying, I had planned to do some cleaning, some restoration or something like this, but it appears to me that this is not really required for this one. So then just let's take it apart and see how it is looking from the inside. So let's switch the view a little bit. And the TAC 2 comes with a very strange or very unique screw. So it actually looks a little bit like Torx, but not with 6, but just 4 notches. And a standard, how to call it, cross screwdriver isn't really working. And you can see that other people may try this already. It becomes a little bit roundish. And what I found that is working quite well is a standard flat screwdriver that simply fits exactly into it. So you have to find the right width, so to say. And we have to remove 2 of those rubber self-adhesive pads. Of course, we have to remove 3 screws. And there we go. Last one removed. And let's open up magic. So, and as you can see, there is really no switch or something that looks like a switch inside. So, checking camera alignment, it's okay. And it is really simple built in a way that we have a main contact to this sort of metal ball at the end of our stick. And if you look closer at this sort of rubber, it's a little bit dark here, but some may recognize what this is actually. And I'm going to reveal this quite quickly. This is a valve shaft from a car tire wheel. So from a wheel from a car, and there's usually just some sort of a little shaft coming out of the rim where you put your pressured air onto it, your air hose. And they have used this standard part as the main spring actually. And I'm going to test whether we can remove the ball, because there's one thing I have mentioned that is different compared to my black one. There is a small, let's see whether we can capture it here. You can see there's a small kind of crack or a gap or something like this on this metal shaft. So I'm not sure whether this has been broken due to temperature change or something like this. But on the black one, I can't spot something like this. So there is no welding seam or something like this. So Probably they have used different type of metal shafts or metal pipes or whatever you want to call this. So that's the only flaw point I have to complain about this one. But actually we should be able to remove the ball from it. I assume it's going to be very, very tricky. No, it's not going to work at all. Because it should just simply stay in place, so it's probably not going to get lost during gameplay. But then we would see that this is really indeed a standard car valve shaft, where we could screw in a valve and then we could use it on any car rim whatsoever. That's not what we have in mind actually. But coming back to this no switches, here we can see that there are actually 4 metal plates inside, and the joystick is simply working by connecting this metal ball, this sort of ground wire, to those directional connections. And this is actually the main secret of this almost indestructible joystick principle, because there's no switch that can break. And those metal blades are thick enough, they will really stand a lot of action and probably survive all of us, especially if we keep doing what we are doing right now in eastern part of Europe. And yep, coming back to the joystick topic, which is probably much more enjoyable. And the same principle is used for the fire buttons as well. So they simply have added a washer to this plastic button, and the washer is doing nothing else than just shortening those 2 contacts. And this is actually how the fire button is working. And yeah, that's the whole secret of the TAC 2 joystick. It is really as simple as it is here presented on my desk. And there are a couple of things which you can do to do some maintenance. And this is actually, I'm using some contact cleaner because usually this contains some sort of anti-corrosion material, chemical, whatever you want to call this. And applying this to the contacts every now and then should do the trick. And indeed, using the joystick is probably the best medicine at all. Then you will not have any problems at all. Yeah, and actually, as I said, this thing looks much better than expected, so there's actually no need to do some cleaning. I had expected to take it apart completely and to do some washing and all that stuff, but I do not think that this is actually required. There's probably one last tip or hint or something like this on the fire button. They have a pretty huge, let's say, contact area, which makes operating them quite smooth, but you can feel some friction. And if you are not happy with this one, you can apply a very small amount of silicone oil, for example, to let them run a bit smoother. But over the time you will have some accumulation of plastic particles, so to say, and they start to build some sort of a sticky paste, or it's not really a fluid, but well, you grease, let's call it grease, which may produce the opposite effect of what you're looking for. So I keep mine as dry as possible, and you may have every now and then some sort of squeaking noise when it becomes a bit too, well, let's say, polluted with plastic particles, and then you just have to open it and then just rub it free until it's clean, and then everything is fine. So yeah, then well, let's put it back together, and then let's be happy that this one is working so good. And yeah, I'm really surprised that I got a chance to find this decent model. So just paying attention that we're not going to squeeze any cables, and then can screw in the screws and everything is going to be fine again. Yep, and that's actually all I have for this episode, and I'm not going to extend this any longer as necessary. Well, as usual, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your support on either here the YouTube channel by joining a membership, or on Patreon, or if you like on Ko-fi or Ko-fi, however it is pronounced. There are different opinions about this as well. And I'm looking forward to your comments and thoughts about this joystick. And if you have any ideas about the build date or something like this, feel free to add this to the comment section. The original price tag would be interesting as well. So if you compare this to the money you have spent nowadays on platforms like eBay or something like this, would be nice to learn about the original price as well. And yeah, that's actually all for this episode. Thanks a lot for watching, and thanks a lot for following me on Twitter for more frequent retro related posts as compared here to YouTube. And yep, that's all. Thanks, and see you next time. Bye bye.